We're back again with the old Dodge 70 Charger that last time we seen it was rolling down the road, but also smoking along the way whenever I laid into the accelerator. My theory behind that is the carburetor that we have, being a more performance oriented carburetor above the normal Edelbrock 1405 and 06 carburetors, was dumping too much gas into the engine. So what I'm going to have to be looking at here is the jets on this thing to see if maybe I could put some smaller jets in this thing and see if we could get some better performance out of this thing. And if that doesn't work, I'm just gonna have to swap the carburetor out and try again. So on the carburetor, there's 8 bolts around the top that have to come out, as well as the clip for the accelerator pump and our choke right here. They use little retaining clips that you could pluck out with a pair of needle nose pliers. And of course your fuel line, and if you got an electric choke, you'll have to disconnect that more than likely. But because this one doesn't have that, don't have to worry about that. But once those bolts are off, this whole thing just slides right off. And chuck that aside. Kind of put that thing upside down so I don't bend the little needles there. Little valve thingies. But our jets, like we got our focus, got our primaries right there, and the secondaries are kind of right underneath right there. Same thing on the other float bowl over there. But you know, I have to get a screwdriver or find a proper screwdriver so I could try to see if I can get these jets out without mangling them up. Because if that happens, I'm dead in the water right off the bat. So give me a second. Okay, I got the primary jet out on the right side, but the secondary is boogered up and was boogered up from the gate. So we might have a serious problem on that end, but we're gonna still try to go ahead and swap out the primaries and the one secondary just to see if we get any kind of positive results. But the secondary I'll start with has a number on there, if we could focus. It says 404 on it, and on our little chart here, 404 is like the biggest friggin' jet available in this little kit here that I have. The other one on the primary, that 404 was the secondary, by the way. The primary had a stamping of, it looked like 401 or something. Yeah, 401, which again, the primaries had second from the largest jets available. Now, have some jets in here. One of them is 389, or no, 392. Yeah, 392. We got a more 401s over there. It was like a 400, so no, wait, hold on, let me focus. Here's the 389 right there. I'm thinking I'll probably swap out these 389s for the primary and put this 392 in the secondary. See if that might help with our setup. As far as these metering rods, I have to look at that too and see what the deal might be with that. Let me dig into this some more and I will get back with you. From what I'm seeing so far on a stock setup carburetor, the 389 and 392 jets are kind of common. I have seen the recommendations be a slightly larger jet on the primary versus the secondary, but still going to see how this might work. We're really going blind in here because this is the first time doing this. As for metering rods, I'm looking at the recommended one being like a 70 thousandths or 75 thousandths by 47 thousandths. So the closest to that, I'm looking at a 73 thousandths by 47, which is a 7347, which I have right there. And they recommend using the orange springs, which are those dull looking ones right there. So we have our metering rod tube right there. Pretty simple. There's a spring with a little hook in there to hold the metering rod in place. Just carefully snap that all off, put the rod in there, put the spring back on there, and then swap out the spring, which this already looks like an orange one, just kind of faded. The number on this one is a, let's see if we can focus on this crap, 6852, which is a 68 thousandths by 52 thousandths. So we're going to go ahead and put those in based on recommendations or very similar recommendations and put this stuff back together and see what happens. So stand by. Anybody familiar with Mopars is familiar with this gigantic boat anchor of a starter right here that, even though it's huge, it doesn't really crank out a lot of power. And a lot of people upgrade to the performance starters that, while they might still be big sometimes, they throw out a little more horsepower. Or they go to the modern mini starters, which throw out twice the horsepower as these old school starters. I've also seen reference to 318 starters, and specifically Magnum 318 starters, being interchangeable with the big block engines. So I want to try to test that theory out with this regular 318 starter I have right here. I'm going to see if this thing actually fits, because if so, that'll be awesome, because that opens the door to me finding a mini starter for a 318 a little more common anyway. So give me a second. Contrary to what I initially thought regarding the exhaust, I was able to get the old starter out, as well as get our smaller starter in and bolted up. Wires are secured. I'm going to see if everything actually meshes up like it's supposed to, because depending on the size of the ring gear on your torque converter or flywheel, there might be some discrepancies. We're about to find out in a second. Well, the starter actually works fairly well. Still got other issues though. Stand by. Didn't like that shit. Alright, the engine's running. Starts up pretty quick with that 318 mini starter on there, but we still have some issues with our carburetor. More than likely the jets I put in the primaries were probably too friggin' small, because this thing won't take throttle for nothing. As you can see, I already tweaked the thing several times over, and I'm not getting any luck out of this carburetor right now, so I'm gonna have to pop the top off again and go up to the next size on the jets and see how that plays out. Yeah, I tried everything I could with this thing, between the fuel air jets, even changing the position of our accelerator pump. Put the next set of jets in there, which were 398s, which was actually one step below the original ones, which were 401s, and that still ain't helping. And still has that hiccup when I try to give it quick throttle. That normally ain't the case with these Edelbrocks that I've always experienced. But let me go find me another Edelbrock, and I'll get back with you. Alright, we went ahead and took this generic Edelbrock carburetor, one of those eBay/Amazon specials you could typically find for about 200 bucks, give or take, but they're supposed to be a Chinese equivalent of a 1405 or 06 carburetor. Had this thing on the FMT a good while ago, but alright, this thing's had time to warm up pretty good. Got the idle set to a point where it's happy. Any lower than this and then it wants to start stumbling a little bit. Obviously don't want to go higher, but that's what we're working with right now. Let's see if we can get any kind of magic out of this thing. Okay, as we could clearly see from the few seconds of footage doing a test drive that was actually worth adding, this thing was starting off fairly well and then it fell flat on its face. So our generic carburetor, yeah, this thing's probably going to need to be gone through thoroughly, just like the other bona fide Edelbrock, because we could see a lot of shit in the float bowls, which means I'm sure there's a lot of shit inside all the different passages and everything. Even our accelerator pump diaphragm pretty much fell apart when I pulled that apart, so this thing wasn't even getting the kind of juice it should get to inject that burst of gas into the primary barrel. So yeah, this thing's gonna need work. And digging back into our performance Edelbrock, it's probably gonna end up needing to be gone through again just as well. Probably gonna have to pull all these different components apart and thoroughly clean everything out, because, well, even though a carburetor is rebuilt, if it sits too long, especially with gas in there, it's going to be no different than a carburetor that was never touched, because all kinds of shit's going to start to grow inside there from this new gas evaporating and then leaving deposits inside of places that nothing should exist. So alright, we finally received our fake Edelbrock 1405 carburetor. Actually comes with a whole bunch of different stuff. Got our regular gaskets, we got extra jets, we have our threaded rod for mounting the air cleaner. Let's see what other garbage do they have in there. They have caps and T's for the vacuum hoses. Even have some extra worm clamps, studs to mount the carburetor, even a length of fuel hose. Even have a manual that's got a little tuning guide in there that I saw to show you, let's get the thing open, like how you could change the jets around, what combination of jets to change around for the application you might be trying to use this thing on. But we're gonna just mount this thing on here and see how things go from there, because this is not exactly a performance engine by any means. We just want to be able to make the thing run. So out with the old, in with the new. that about does it for the tweaking and tuning and other tomfoolery on the old Dodge. Engine wants to start running hot after a short while, and doing burnouts and laying into it more than normal is probably not helping matters at all, even though this car should be more than capable of taking that little bit of abuse. As such, I'm going to have to look at some things, starting with our thermostat. Even though it's a 160 degree thermostat, which is more than capable of keeping this engine cold, I have to test to see if the thing is sticking, and the best way to do that will be to just remove the thing and run without it to see if we have proper coolant flow and a good operating temperature range. With that also being said, hit the notification button so you'll be kept up to date on new videos pertaining to the old Dodge, among other things, and hit the like button because, well, likes are free compared to old Mopars, and subscribe so we can get more on the map with all these crazy videos, and check out YouTube Shorts and TikTok for those of you that don't want to sit through extra long videos. And with all of that being said and done, I will catch you later. I am out.